On the outer rim of human space, where stars grew thin and silence stretched like old cloth, the colony of Viridia clung to its orbit like a stubborn seed. It was not a grand place, just a cluster of domes and tunnels built into the side of a dead moon, humming with recycled air and the quiet desperation of people who had come too far to turn back. Among them lived Lila Morrow, a xenolinguist with tired eyes and hands that moved gently even when she was angry. Lila spent most of her days listening, not to people but to signals, fragments of alien speech caught in the static between worlds. She had spent years trying to understand the Cathari, a species so proud they rarely spoke to outsiders unless it served their image. They valued symmetry, silence, and flawless form above all else. To them, beauty was law, and deviation was shame. So when a diplomatic courier arrived from the Cathari High Envoy, sealed in polished obsidian and marked with the sigil of final offering, the colony command assumed it was a peace token, maybe a sculpture, maybe a data crystal of their star charts. Something elegant, something perfect. They were wrong. Inside the pod, suspended in pale blue gel, was a woman. She was tall and thin, her skin the color of moonlit ash. Her hair fell like spun silver, tangled and damp, but it was her face that made the officers step back. Long scars ran from her temples down to her jaw, glowing faintly with soft blue light, pulsing like slow heartbeats. Her ears tapered to sharp points and her eyes, closed in stasis sleep, were rimmed with the same luminous lines. She wore no clothes, only a thin membrane that shimmered like oil on water. The transmission that came with her was brief and cold. "This is our final gift," the Cathari voice intoned, smooth as glass and just as sharp. "She is the ugliest among us. We give her to you, as a sign that we no longer seek your company. Keep her, discard her, it matters not. She is worthless." Colonel Hargrove, head of Viridia Security, crossed his arms. "They're mocking us, sending us their trash." "Maybe," said Dr. Ellis, the colony's chief scientist, peering through the pod's glass. "But look at those markings. They're not wounds. They're structured, almost like writing." "Doesn't matter," Hargrove snapped. "She's defective. Could be dangerous. We incinerate her at dawn." Lila hadn't spoken yet. She stood at the back of the room, her fingers pressed against the cool wall, her breath shallow. She had studied the Cathari for 7 years. She knew their language, their rituals, the way they ranked their young by the smoothness of their skin and the symmetry of their bone structure. To be called ugly by them wasn't just an insult. It was a death sentence. It meant you had no place in their world. No voice, no name, and yet something about the woman in the pod called to her, not with sound but with stillness. Even in stasis there was dignity in the set of her shoulders, in the way her hands rested over her chest like she was holding something precious. That night, after everyone had left, Lila returned alone. The pod hissed as she overrode the lock. Her clearance wasn't high enough, but she'd spent years hacking old systems just to hear alien lullabies. The gel drained away. The woman's eyes fluttered open. They were silver. Not gray, not blue, true silver like liquid metal catching starlight. And in them, Lila saw no fear, only exhaustion. And something deeper. Recognition, maybe, or hope. Lila knelt beside the pod. "Hi," she said softly. "My name is Lila." The woman didn't speak. She couldn't yet, her throat was dry, her muscles weak. But she looked at Lila like she'd been waiting a long time to be seen. "They called you ugly," Lila said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But you're not. You're beautiful." The woman's lips trembled. A single tear slipped down her cheek, and where it fell, the scar beneath it glowed brighter for a moment, like a star waking up. Then from the woman's tangled hair, something moved, a small shape, no bigger than Lila's palm, uncurled itself. It had scales the color of midnight, wings like folded smoke, and eyes that burned gold. It chirped, a sound like wind through ancient trees, and nuzzled the woman's neck. Lila froze. "Is that a dragon?" The creature blinked at her, then stretched its wings. Tiny sparks danced along the edges. The woman finally spoke. Her voice was rough but musical, like stones singing in a river. "Ember," she said. "Ember," Lila repeated. The name fit. Over the next few hours, Lila brought water, soft cloth, and a thermal blanket. She helped the woman, Naira, as she later learned, sit up, drink, breathe. Ember stayed close, coiling around Naira's wrist like a living bracelet, his warmth steady and calm. By morning, Hargrove's order stood. The gift was to be destroyed at first light. But Lila had already made her choice. She filed a formal request under obscure xenocultural preservation, Clause 7b, a rule buried so deep even the colony's AI had forgotten it. It allowed a human researcher to claim an alien individual as a cultural ward if they believed the being held unique knowledge or significance. Hargrove laughed when he saw it. You're claiming that thing? Based on what? A hunch? Based on respect, Lila said, standing straighter than she had in years. They threw her away because she didn't fit their idea of perfect. That doesn't make her worthless. It makes her rare. To everyone's surprise, Earth Central approved the request. Maybe they were curious. Maybe they were tired of Cathari arrogance. Or maybe, just maybe, someone far away remembered what it felt like to be called ugly. So Naira stayed. She was given a small quarters near Lila's own. Ember followed her everywhere, perching on shelves curling around Lila's boots when she sat to work. The colony watched them with wary eyes, but no one interfered. Days passed. Naira learned basic English quickly. Her mind was sharp, her memory vast. She spoke little of her past, but sometimes, when she thought Lila wasn't looking, she would trace her glowing scars with her fingers, whispering words that made the air hum. One evening, as they sat by the observation window watching the slow dance of distant stars, Lila asked, "Why did they really send you here?" Naira was quiet for a long time. Then she said, "Because I remembered." Remembered what? What they wanted to forget. Before Lila could ask more, Ember let out a low trill. His scales rippled, and for a moment the reflection in the window didn't show the stars outside, but a different sky, filled with constellations Lila had never seen. That night, strange things began to happen in Viridia. Gravity flickered in Corridor 3, lights dimmed and brightened without cause, and in the hydroponics bay, the plants began to grow in spirals that matched the patterns of Naira's scars. Layla didn't tell anyone. Not yet, but she started recording everything because she knew now. Naira wasn't just a cast-off. She was a key. And Ember wasn't just a pet. He was a guardian. And the Cathari hadn't sent her as an insult. They'd sent her as a warning. Meanwhile, far beyond the rim, Cathari warships turned their sleek noses toward human space. Their commanders spoke in hushed tones of the defective one who had been touched by a human, of the song that had almost escaped her lips during transit, of the dragon whose wings could fold space. They had hoped she would be destroyed. They had been wrong, and Lila Morrow, who had once spent her days listening to silence, now found herself standing at the edge of a storm she didn't understand, but would soon have to face for now. Though she sat with Naira and Ember in the quiet dark, sharing a cup of warm broth, watching the stars blink like distant eyes, and for the first time in a long time, Leela didn't feel alone, she felt ready. Weeks passed on Viridia, and the quiet life Lila had known began to unravel like old thread. At first, the changes were small, so small most people ignored them. A cup would float for half a second before falling. A door would open on its own. The colony's old clock tower, long broken, chimed once at midnight, though no one had wound it in years. People blamed faulty wiring or solar flares, but Lila knew better. Naira was changing things without meaning to. She spent her days walking the colony's outer paths, her bare feet silent on the metal grates. Ember followed close behind, his tiny claws clicking softly. Whenever Naira hummed, just low notes, wordless and sad, the air around her shimmered. Plants leaned toward her. Lights flickered in time with her breath. Once, during a routine power check, an engineer swore he saw the wiring in the wall rearrange itself into a spiral that matched the scars on Naira's arms. Lila watched it all from a distance, taking notes in a worn journal. She didn't ask too many questions. She knew Naira would speak when she was ready. That time came one evening in the observation dome. The dome was Lila's favorite place, a wide glass bubble on the colony's highest ridge, where you could see the endless black and the scattered stars. That night, Earth was just a pale blue dot in the distance. Naira stood at the center, her silver eyes fixed on the sky. Ember sat on her shoulder, wings folded tight. "They're coming," Naira said suddenly. Lila stopped writing. "Who?" "The Cathari." Lila's stomach dropped.
"How do you know?"
Naira turned. Her scars pulsed brighter, casting soft blue shadows on the floor. "I feel them. Their ships move like knives through silence. They do not speak, but their anger hums in the void." Sure enough, 2 days later, Viridia's long-range sensors picked up a fleet. 5 Cathari warships, sleek and black, shaped like falling tears. They didn't hail. They didn't threaten. They just stopped at the edge of human space and waited. Colonel Hargrove called an emergency meeting. Lila was summoned, though she wasn't military. She walked in to find Naira already there, standing alone in the center of the room like a prisoner. Ember was hidden in her hair, only his golden eyes visible. "You brought this on us," Hargrove said, jabbing a finger at Naira. "They want her back. They say if we return her, they'll leave peacefully." "And if we don't?" Lila asked. "Then they'll burn Viridia to ash. They've done it before." Naira didn't flinch. She just looked at Lila. "I will go," she said quietly. "I do not wish harm on your home." "No," Lila said, stepping forward. "You're not a bargaining chip. You're a person." Hargrove snorted. "She's an alien with glowing tattoos and a pet lizard." "We don't owe her anything," Ember hissed, a sound like steam escaping a star. That night, Lila took Naira to the old terraforming core, an abandoned chamber deep beneath the colony, built during Viridia's first days. It was meant to warm the moon's surface, but the project failed. Now it was just a hollow sphere of rusted pipes and dead machinery, covered in dust and forgotten cables. "Why here?" Naira asked. "Because no one comes here," Lila said. "And because I think this place understands you." As if in answer, the moment Naira stepped inside, the dust on the floor began to swirl. Not from wind, from something deeper. The air grew thick, humming with a low tone that made Lila's teeth ache. Naira's scars flared, and for the first time, Lila saw the truth. The scars weren't just marks. They were words, ancient ones, written in a language older than the Cathari Empire, older than human ships, older than most stars still burning. As Naira walked, her bare feet left faint trails of light on the metal floor. The patterns matched star charts Lila had seen in old archives, charts no one could read. "This is the song of making," Naira whispered. "The Cathari once knew it, but they feared its power, so they cut it from their memory, and from their people. You remember it? I was born with it. That is why they called me ugly. Because I could not forget." Ember leapt from her shoulder and landed on a broken console. He pressed his snout against a cracked screen, and suddenly, the whole room lit up, not with electricity, but with starlight. Images bloomed in the air, galaxies forming, stars dying, worlds rising from dust. And in the center of it all, a great engine hidden inside a dead sun. "What is that?" Lila breathed. "The heart of the First War," Naira said. "A weapon that does not destroy but rewrites. It can heal broken stars, awaken sleeping worlds, but only if sung to correctly, and the Cathari want to keep it silent." Naira nodded. "They believe control is peace, but silence is not peace. It is fear." Over the next few days, strange things grew worse. Gravity wells opened in empty hallways, pulling tools and chairs into floating clusters. The colony's water began to glow faintly at night, and Lila started hearing music, soft, wordless, echoing through vents and walls. It was Naira's voice, even when she wasn't singing aloud. Then came the broadcast. It wasn't planned. It happened during a routine comms test. Lila had hooked Naira up to a low-frequency transmitter, just to see if her voice could carry through the colony's old network. Naira sang one note, a single, clear tone that lasted 10 seconds. Every screen on Viridia lit up. Every speaker played the same sound. And outside, in space, the nearest Cathari ship shuddered. Its shields flickered and died. Not from damage, from recognition. The ship's systems recognized the song, and for a moment the Cathari remembered what they had lost. Hargrove stormed into Lila's quarters an hour later. "What did you do?" "Nothing," Lila said. "She just sang. That song knocked out their defenses. Their captain sent a message. He called it the voice of the forgotten. They're scared, Lila." "Really scared?" "Good," Lila said. "Maybe they'll think twice before calling someone ugly again." But the calm didn't last. 3 days later, Ember vanished. Lila found Naira standing on the outer airlock platform, staring into the void. No suit, no tether, just her in the endless dark. "He went to scout," Naira said without turning. "He can fold space for short bursts. He's looking for the others." "Others?" "Those like me, exiled, hidden, scattered across the rim. Ember can hear their songs, faint as they are." Lila joined her at the edge. "You're not alone anymore, you know." Naira finally looked at her. Tears traced paths down her cheeks, and where they fell, tiny points of light appeared on the metal floor like fallen stars. "I know," she said. "That is why I am afraid." "Why?" "Because now I have something to lose." That night, Lila dreamed of stars waking up. of dragons flying between galaxies, of Naira standing at the center of a storm of light, hands outstretched, singing a song that mended broken worlds. When she woke, Ember was back. He landed on her desk, exhausted, his scales dull. In his claws he held a small crystal, black, smooth, humming with a quiet pulse. Naira took it and pressed it to her forehead. Her eyes went wide. "They are closer than we thought," she whispered. 3 of them. Hiding in the ruins of the 7th ring. The Cathari are hunting them. Lila made a decision then. She contacted Earth Central, not through official channels, but through an old friend in xenocultural outreach. She sent everything: recordings of Naira's song, footage of the gravity shifts, Ember's star maps, the truth about the scars. The reply came fast. "Stand by. Fleet en route. Do not engage. Protect the ward." But Lila knew they wouldn't arrive in time. The Cathari ships had begun to move, not toward Viridia, toward the 7th ring. Naira stood at the window again, Ember coiled around her arm. "We must go," she said. "We can't. We don't have a ship." Naira smiled, a small, sad thing. "We do not need one." She placed her palm on the glass. The scars on her hand flared. Outside, the star seemed to lean closer. Ember lifted his head and let out a long, low hum that vibrated through the floor. And deep below, in the dead terraforming core, something began to wake up. Lila didn't understand it all yet, but she knew one thing. This wasn't just about saving Naira anymore. It was about remembering what the universe had tried to forget. And Lila Morrow, the quiet linguist from the edge of nothing, was ready to listen. The Cathari warships moved like shadows across the void, silent and sharp. They did not fire. They did not speak. They simply came, closing the distance between Viridia and the 7th ring, a broken chain of asteroids where ancient ruins slept beneath layers of cosmic dust. Lila knew they were running out of time. Earth's fleet was still days away. Viridia had no weapons strong enough to stop even one of those ships. And yet, Naira stood calm in the center of the old terraforming core, her hands pressed against the cold metal wall, her scars burning like live wires. Ember circled above her, wings spread wide, humming a sound so deep it made the floor tremble. "We cannot wait," Naira said. "They will find the others before we do." "But how do we get there?" Lila asked. "We have no ship, no weapons, nothing." Naira turned. Her silver eyes held something new. Certainty. "We have song, and we have Ember." Before Lila could ask what she meant, Ember landed on a rusted console and bit down on a thick cable. Sparks flew, but instead of dying, the lights in the chamber flickered to life, not with electricity but with starlight. The walls shimmered, the air grew thick like standing inside a dream. Then the floor vanished, not collapsed, not broken, just gone. Lila gasped as she and Naira dropped, not down, but sideways, through a fold in space itself. Ember flew ahead, his tiny body glowing like a coal in the dark. They tumbled through silence, past streaks of color that had no name, past echoes of old stars and unborn worlds. It lasted only seconds, but it felt like years. They landed softly on a cracked stone platform, surrounded by ruins. The 7th ring was not what Lila expected. It was not just rocks and dust. It was a graveyard of cities half swallowed by time, their towers bent like broken spines. Vines of light grew from the cracks, pulsing gently. And in the center of it all stood 3 figures, tall, slender, marked with scars just like Naira's, though each pattern was different. They turned as Naira approached. One had scars like falling rain, another like branching trees, the third like spiraling galaxies. All glowed with the same soft blue light. "You came," said the one with rain scars. Her voice was weary but warm. "I could not leave you," Naira replied. Lila stood back, watching. Ember landed on her shoulder, his warmth a comfort in the cold air. The Cathari ships arrived an hour later. They did not land. They hovered, dark and perfect, blocking out the stars. A voice echoed across the ruins, not through speakers, but through the air itself, smooth and cold. "Defectives, you are ordered to surrender. Your existence is an error. Correct it." Naira stepped forward. "We are not errors. We are memory." The lead ship pulsed with red light. Memory is dangerous. It breeds chaos. You will be erased. Then the attack began, not with lasers or missiles, with silence. The Cathari unleashed a wave of null sound, a frequency that canceled all vibration, all life, all song. The vines of light dimmed. The ruins groaned. Lila's ears ached as if her bones were being pulled apart. Naira cried out and fell to her knees. Her scars flickered, fighting to stay lit. But Ember leapt into the sky. He opened his wings wide and let out a roar, not loud but deep, a note that cut through the silence like a knife through fog. The sound rippled outward, turning the null wave back on itself. The Cathari ships shuddered. In that moment, Lila understood. Ember was not just a dragon, he was a counterpoint. Where Naira held the song of making, Ember held the song of balance. Together they could undo what the Cathari tried to silence. Help them, Lila whispered to herself. She ran to the nearest ruin, climbing over broken stone until she reached a high arch. From her pack, she pulled a small transmitter, the same one she'd used on Viridia. She hooked it to a power cell and turned it on. "Naira," she called. "Sing with me." Naira looked up, confused. "Trust me." Lila began to hum, a simple human tune, one her grandmother used to sing. It was not powerful, not ancient, but it was real. It was hers. Naira closed her eyes, and then she joined in. Her voice rose, weaving around Lila's melody, adding layers of meaning, of starlight, of forgotten names. The other three exiles joined too, their voices blending into a harmony that made the ruins tremble. Ember flew in circles above them, his hum locking the song into place. The Cathari ships began to fail, not explode, not crash, but unravel. Their perfect hulls rippled like water. Their lights dimmed. Their silence broke into static. One by one, their systems recognized the song, not as a threat but as a truth they had buried for too long. On the lead ship, the commander stared at his screens in horror. "It is the first tongue," he whispered, "the language of the builders." His second in command asked, "What do we do?" The commander did not answer. He simply turned off his weapons. Back on the ground, Lila collapsed, breathless. Naira caught her before she hit the stone. "You did it," Naira said. "We did it," Lila corrected. But the peace was short. As the Cathari ships powered down, a new signal appeared on Lila's wristcom, a priority alert from Earth Central. "Fleet has arrived. Stand by for extraction. Do not engage further." Lila looked up. In the distance, human ships emerged from warp, sleek, armed, ready for war. They saw the Cathari fleet disabled and assumed victory. "No," Lila whispered. "They don't understand." She activated her comm. "Viridia Command, this is Lila Morrow. Do not fire. The situation is under control. Repeat, do not fire." But it was too late. The lead human cruiser locked weapons on the nearest Cathari ship. Naira's eyes widened. "They will break the truce," Ember growled, low and urgent. Then Naira did something no one expected. She stepped into the open, arms wide, scars blazing like beacons. She began to sing, not a song of war but of warning, of connection, of shared sky. The human ships hesitated. On the bridge of the USS Marlowe, Captain Daniels frowned. "What is that signal?" "Unknown origin," said the comms officer. "But it's beautiful. Beautiful or not, we have orders." "Wait," Daniels said, holding up a hand. "Play it again." As the song filled the bridge, something shifted. The crew felt it, a pull in their chests, a memory they didn't know they had, of stars before cities, of silence before noise, of unity before fear. Daniels lowered his weapon. "Stand down," he ordered. "All ships, stand down." On the ground, Lila let out a breath she didn't know she was holding. Naira stopped singing. Her light dimmed, but her smile remained. The Cathari commander opened a channel, not through weapons but through voice. "You have awakened what we tried to bury," he said, his tone less cold now. "Why?" Because memory is not chaos, Naira replied. It is compass. The commander was silent for a long time. Then he said, We will leave. But know this. The High Council will not forgive this. They will come with greater force. Then we will be ready, Naira said. As the Cathari ships turned and vanished into the dark, the human fleet moved in to secure the area. Soldiers in armor approached the ruins, weapons lowered but eyes wary. Lila stood with Nira and the others, Ember perched proudly on her shoulder. Captain Daniels himself came down in a shuttle. He was tall, with kind eyes and a scar across his brow. He looked at Naira not with fear but with wonder. Who are you? He asked. I am Naira, she said. And these are my sisters. We are the keepers of the first song. Daniels nodded slowly. Earth Central wants to bring you in for study. We are not specimens, Lila said sharply. I know, Daniels said. That's why I'm offering something else. Sanctuary. On a new station, far from politics. A place where you can be safe and heard. Naira looked at Lila. Lila looked at Ember. Then she nodded. But as they prepared to leave, Ember flew to the highest ruin and let out one last hum. The ground shook. From beneath the stone, something rose. A sphere of black metal, covered in the same glowing glyphs as Naira's scars. Naira gasped. The key. What is it? Lila asked. The map to the stellar engines, Naira said. The ones hidden in dead stars. Ember found it. Daniels watched, silent. Lila knew then that this was only the beginning. The war was not over. It had just changed shape, and humanity for the first time was not fighting alone. As the shuttle lifted off, Lila looked down at the ruins, now glowing softly in the dark. She thought of the song, the scars, the dragon who folded space with his wings. She thought of beauty in the broken, and she knew, no matter what came next, she would stand with them. Not as a savior, but as a friend. The new station hung in the quiet dark between star systems, far from borders and politics. It had no name yet, just a designation. Outpost Theta 9. Built from salvaged hulls and old terraforming tech, it was rough but safe, and for the first time, Nira and her sisters had a place to breathe. Lila lived with them in the central spire, a tall tower lined with windows that showed the endless sky. Ember had claimed the highest ledge as his own, curling around the antenna like a living crown. The other three, Mira, Sela, and Kira, spent their days tending to the sphere they called the key, tracing its glyphs with gentle fingers, humming songs that made the metal warm. But peace did not last. Rumors came first, whispers over encrypted channels. The Cathari High Council had declared Nira and her sisters outlaws, not just exiles, enemies of order. They called their song a plague, their scars a disease, and they were not alone. Other species, ones who valued control over truth, began to speak against them too. Then the attack started, not with fleets, not with declarations, with silence. Ships carrying supplies to Theta 9 vanished. Comms went dark for hours at a time, and one morning Lila woke to find the station's outer sensors blind, wiped clean by a signal so clean it left no trace. They are testing us, Naira said, standing at the window, her arms crossed, seeing how far they can push before we break. We won't break, Layla said. Maybe not, Naira replied. But they do not need to break us. They only need to isolate us. Earth Central grew distant. Replies came slower. Promises faded. Even Captain Daniels stopped visiting. The station was running low on power, food, medicine, and the key, the map to the stellar engines, remained locked. No matter how much they sang, it would not open fully. It needs more, Mira said one evening, her rain-like scars dim. It needs a heart. What does that mean? Lila asked. The engines are not machines, Sela explained, her tree scars pulsing softly. They are alive. They sleep inside dead stars. To wake them, you must offer something real. Not just song, not just memory, but choice. Lila looked at Naira. What kind of choice? Naira did not answer right away. She walked to the center of the room and placed her palm on the key. It glowed brighter, but only for a moment. Then it faded again. A human choice, she finally said. The engines were built in a time when many species worked together. But humans were not there. If a human offers to wake them, not for war, not for power, but for balance, then the lock may open. Lila understood. You want me to do it. Only if you choose to, Naira said. No song can force a true choice. That night, Lila could not sleep. She walked the empty halls past sleeping quarters and silent gardens until she reached the observation deck. Ember joined her, landing on the railing with a soft click. Am I ready for this? She whispered. Ember tilted his head. Then he opened his wings and hummed, a low, steady note that filled the room with warmth. It was not an answer, but it was enough. The next morning, Lila gathered everyone in the core chamber. Even the station's few human engineers came, drawn by the quiet tension in the air. I will do it, Lila said. I will wake the engines, Naira nodded. But you must go to the place where the first engine sleeps. The dead star called Vera's Eye. It is deep in Cathari space, guarded. Then we go together, Leela said. Plans formed quickly. The station had one small ship, fast, quiet, built for stealth. They would take it. Naira, Lila, and Ember. The others would stay and protect the station. The journey took 3 days. They flew through old trade lanes, avoiding patrols, slipping through sensor shadows. Ember sat on Lila's lap the whole time, his scales warm against her hands. When they reached Vera's Eye, it was not what Lila expected. The star was dead. Yes, cold and dark, its surface cracked like old bone. But around it floated a ring of ruins just like the 7th ring. And in the center of the ring, half buried in dust, was a structure shaped like a hand reaching for the sky. The cradle, Naira whispered. They landed the ship on a flat stone platform. The air outside was thin but breathable. As they stepped out, the ground hummed beneath their feet. Ember flew ahead, circling the cradle. His hum grew louder, more urgent. Inside the structure, the walls were covered in glyphs, same as Naira's scars, same as the key. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, empty except for a single indentation shaped like a human hand. This is it, Lila said. She walked forward. Naira followed but stopped at the edge of the room. Only you can do this, she said. The choice must be yours alone. Lila took a deep breath. Then she placed her hand on the pedestal. Nothing happened at first. Then the glyphs on the walls lit up. The floor trembled, and a voice, old, deep, not human but not alien either, spoke in her mind. Why do you wake us? Lila did not speak aloud. She thought her answer clearly. To protect what is beautiful, even if the world calls it ugly. Silence. Then the voice again. Show us your heart. Lila closed her eyes. She thought of Nira, standing alone in a stasis pod called Worthless, of Ember, small and fierce, folding space with his wings, of the sisters singing in the ruins, of Captain Daniels lowering his weapons, of all the quiet moments when kindness won over fear. She thought of beauty in the broken, and the chamber exploded with light. Not fire, not heat, pure living starlight. Outside, Vera's eye began to glow, slowly at first, then brighter until the dead star burned gold again. The ring of ruins lit up, each tower pulsing in time with the light. And far away across the galaxy, other dead stars began to wake. On Viridia, colonists looked up as new constellations formed in the sky. On Earth, astronomers scrambled as old star maps became wrong overnight. On Cathari homeworlds, the perfect cities trembled as their shields flickered, not from attack, but from awe. The stellar engines were awake, and they were not weapons. They were guardians. Back at the cradle, Lila pulled her hand away. The pedestal was warm. The glyphs now included a new pattern, one shaped like a human heart. Naira ran to her. You did it. We did it, Lila said, smiling. As they walked back to the ship, Ember flying above them, the sky changed. The stars were brighter, closer, as if the universe had leaned in to listen, but they knew the fight was not over. The Cathari High Council would not accept this. They would see the awakened stars not as hope but as threat, and they would come with everything they had. Yet for the first time, humanity was not alone, and beauty, true beauty, could not be silenced. As the ship lifted off, Lila looked out the window at the burning star below. She thought of all the worlds that would now be protected, all the voices that would be heard, and she knew this was not the end. It was the beginning of something new, something kind, something human. Peace came quietly to the outer rim, like morning light after a long night. The awakened stars burned steady in the dark, their light not harsh but gentle, weaving a net of calm across human and Cathari space alike. No one fired. No one fled. For the first time in decades, ships passed each other without raising shields. On outpost Theta 9, life settled into a new rhythm. Nira and her sisters tended the key, now open and humming with soft energy. They taught the station's few children how to listen to the stars, how to trace constellations with their fingers, how to find beauty in asymmetry. Ember grew larger, his wings now wide enough to shade the entire observation deck. He spent his days flying between the awakened stars, carrying messages in his hum, stitching the galaxy together one note at a time. Lila stayed with them, not as a scientist anymore, but as a friend. She no longer recorded data or filed reports. Instead, she walked the halls with a small notebook, writing down stories of the sisters of Ember, of the stars that woke because someone called an outcast beautiful. But peace, like all living things, needed care. Rumors still drifted in on the comms. The Cathari High Council had not vanished. They had gone silent. Too silent. Their fleets withdrew from the borders. Their broadcasts stopped. Even their trade ships disappeared. It was as if they were holding their breath. "They are waiting," Nira said one evening, standing at the window as Ember circled a newly bright star. "They do not understand the song, so they fear it." "Can't we talk to them?" Lila asked. "They do not speak to those they deem broken," Sayla replied, her tree scars dimming. "To them, we are noise in a perfect world." Lila looked down at her hands. They were not perfect. They had scars too. Small ones from old burns, cuts from fixing wires, lines from years of worry. But they were hers. And they had placed the stars in Nira's hands. That thought gave her an idea. The next day, she sent a message. Not to Earth Central, not to military command, but to every open channel she could find. Human Cathari, neutral ports, trade hubs, even old listening posts drifting in dead zones. The message was simple. No demands. No threats. Just words. We are not your enemies. We remember what you forgot. Come and listen. Most ignored it. Some called it propaganda, but a few answered. First came a Cathari scout ship, small and unmarked. It hovered at the edge of Theta 9's perimeter for 3 days before sending a single request. "Let us hear the song." Nira agreed. She stood on the outer platform, Ember at her side, and sang, not the full song of making, but a fragment. A lullaby from before the silence. The scout ship's lights flickered. Then it turned and left without another word. A week later, 2 more ships came. Then 5. Then a whole flotilla of outcasts, Cathari who had hidden their scars, who had whispered old songs in secret, who had raised children with uneven eyes and called them perfect anyway. They asked for sanctuary. Theta 9 gave it. The station grew. New domes bloomed like flowers in the dark. Gardens of light vines spread across the hull. Children, Cathari and human, played together in the corridors, their laughter mixing with Ember's hum. And still, the High Council said nothing, until the day the silence broke. A single ship arrived. Not a warship, not a scout. A vessel of state, long and white, carved with the sigil of the first speaker, the highest voice in the Cathari Empire. It carried no weapons, only one passenger. He stepped onto the platform alone, wearing simple robes, his face smooth and unmarked, perfect by their standards. But his eyes held something new, curiosity. "I am Elron," he said. "I speak for the council." Nira faced him. "Why are you here?" "Because the stars are singing," he said, "and we cannot unhear them." He stayed for 3 days. He walked the station. He watched the children. He listened as Nira sang to a dying plant, and it bloomed with silver leaves. He saw Ember fold space just to bring a lost toy back to a crying child. On the 3rd night, he stood with Lila on the observation deck. "You called her beautiful," he said, when everyone else called her broken. "She was never broken," Lila replied. "Just different." Elron was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "The council will not change overnight, but I will speak. I will tell them what I saw. That beauty is not sameness, it is truth." When he left, he took a small crystal with him, a recording of Nira's song given freely. Weeks passed, then months. No attacks came, no orders, only quiet. And then one morning, a new signal reached Theta 9, not from the council, from the edge of known space. A faint hum, weak but clear. A song. Ember perked up immediately. He flew to Lila, chirping urgently. Someone is calling, Naira said, her scars glowing softly. Another exile? Lila asked. Or many, Kira said, her spiral scars pulsing in time with the signal. Lila looked at Naira. What do we do? Naira smiled. We answer. That day, Lila filed a quiet request with Earth Central. Not for weapons. Not for warships. For a new kind of mission. Send no soldiers, she wrote. Send teachers, healers, builders, and those who listen. To her surprise, they approved. A small fleet formed, not of cruisers, but of old freighters and science vessels, painted with stars and open hands. Humans, Cathari outcasts, even a few from species no one had spoken to in centuries. They called themselves the Keepers of Song. Leela stood on the lead ship's deck as they prepared to leave. Nira was beside her, ember coiled around her arm like a living bracelet. You don't have to come, Lila said. Yes, I do, Naira replied. The song is not mine alone. It belongs to all who remember. As the fleet jumped to warp, Lila looked back at Theta 9, now bright with life, a beacon in the dark. She thought of the first day she saw Naira in the pod, called ugly by a species that feared difference. She thought of placing the stars in her hands. And she knew this was not the end of a war. It was the start of something better. A quiet war, yes, but not with guns. With kindness. With memory. With the courage to call broken things beautiful. And as the stars blurred into streaks of light, Lila Morrow, once a quiet linguist on the edge of nothing, smiled because the universe was listening, and for the first time it was singing back.